So welcome everyone to the 2016 DE-CIX Summit. Special welcome to our presenters, our sponsors, and to the Internet Society New York for live streaming this. I'm Ed D'Agostino, Vice President of DE-CIX North America. And sorry for the little delay here with coordinating our Skype call with our other locations. So, not too long ago, I went on a trip to meet someone in a New Jersey data center, and I pulled out my handy HE tool because I was there a little early, and thought I'd do a trace route into Manhattan, see how long it was. Yeah, it was cellular, and there were words of mid-cell or whatever, but I wanted to see how it worked from there. And so, of course, I see the trace route running through Ashburn. And you think about it, we're here, probably many of us are used to that, used to seeing this. But it's really crazy that a place this size, this population, this business center, cable landings, right-of-ways to Boston, Montreal, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Philly, and yet we're hauling all this traffic down to Virginia. It makes no sense. And we think New York needs to be more of a digital hub. New York needs more connectivity. So we thought this here, our New York Summit this year, would be about adding connectivity in New York and bringing those on as panelists and speakers who are doing just that, who are creating more of a digital hub in New York, who are adding to it. Certainly we want to be a big part of that, but it's a big team effort to change how New York works, especially relative to Virginia. And of course, it really assumed us be the giant digital hub that it should be. So with that, we've asked a group of panelists, who you'll soon see, to join us, and then we'll start from there. I think we're about ready.
Yes, we're good to get a live cast to Munich now.
Very good.
Let me use two devices at the same time. Sorry about that. Let's try it. Harold, can you hear us?
Hi, Ed. This is Munich. Welcome to our Customer Summit 2016 here in Munich. You just missed all the guys from Bayern München. They had a short warm-up here in front of us. Now they have to exercise outside. So thank you for being online with us, and I would like to know from you, in August 2012 we spoke for the first time about DE-CIX New York, and today we are very close to being the #1 IX in the metro region. What is the reason for that from your point of view, from an American perspective?
Well, thanks for the question. I think it's important for us to look at where we've come from. Yes, we've been successful, but we've only been live in New York for less than 2.5 years now, and it's really, if you think about how other exchanges have been around for mostly close to 20 years, we've done a tremendous job with about 140 networks with us now, with I think number 7 in North America, and with an ever-growing list of locations that we serve. So, and that's all happened in less than 2.5 years. So it's important to understand that. But I think the real answer is our neutrality. I believe that neutrality begets a lot of what's happened with us. You can't really serve a market by going into your own space if you have no space. It was important for us to build a very big network, and we started out with over 100 access points and switches throughout the region, the Manhattan area. So we have done a great job because we needed to serve the market to build a network. We also did. Because of our neutrality, we've been very successful partnering with data center operators and to a degree that we're adding value to their space, and they welcome us there. So it really has helped us both grow in terms of our partnerships. And then finally, of course, resellers because we don't offer space, and remote peering is great for many networks that we're readily embraced by the reseller community. So I think, but that all comes down to neutrality. I think that adding a truly neutral exchange, data center and carrier neutral in the New York market, I believe that's what's driven our success.
Hello? No sound. Harold? Harold, we cannot hear you. Hello? No, it's getting closer, but not the sound. No chance.
Can you hear me now? Or maybe we can step away.
My guess is they're on mute at the other end.
Yeah. So I think,
Yeah.
you can do like the Martian sound, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's very insightful to say that, but never know.
Well, now it's getting back. Okay.
Yeah, really.
I don't think this should be Istanbul, as if I can see. So the connection is obviously, from the sound perspective, not that promising.
Appears to be a lot of work to do with connectivity, so.
Yeah. Hello?
Claudia, bitte angefangen. Richte die Kamera so, dass wir den Ernst sehen und nicht seine Krawatte. Solange der Chor noch geht, dann legen wir auf, dann sind wir fertig. Vielen Dank.
I don't know if you can hear us, Howard. We still can't hear you.
Aber wir sind jetzt noch eine Minute drin und dann legen wir auf.
Okay. Hallo? Hallo Sascha, dann legen wir auf. Wir legen auf. Yeah. All right. So obviously it does make sense to move forward with the sound, so we can keep it local.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry for that.
We do. I believe we have a reset. Do we need time for a little quick video reset? Okay. Sorry, guys. 2 minutes to maybe grab a little some food and sit back down. We have to get the video reset here. Okay, everyone, we'll get going again here. First, thanks for your patience. We were trying, of course, to have our CEO to give us a nice greeting and to show what's going on in our other locations. As you probably all know, it's happening simultaneously in Istanbul and Munich. So we had a little technical, but thanks for bearing with us. That said, I'll introduce Hunter Newby of Neutrality to give our keynote.
Thanks, Ed. I'm not going to worry about it. Just talk through this. All you got to do is help me out with pulling up the slides so I can hit the button. The slides. Hey, Ed, where are the slides?
But I need here, right here. Is the clicker?
Can I look at them there?
Oh,
Which one do I do?
yeah, so
Oh,
he's going to see the slides up on the, I think so.
Is it possible to see them here or no? Just
No.
this?
No.
And hit that button right
It's on the
there?
desktop there.
Okay.
It's not-
So I hit this button on the right to make it move?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We're going with it. Hi, everybody. I'm Hunter Newby. Thanks for coming. Thanks for having me. Thanks for asking me to be here for this. So I have a pretty interesting history myself, but this isn't about me, so I'm not going to bore everybody with like a long, big dissertation about me. But I'm sort of tied to the recent history of New York interconnections. But I wanted to take us back a little bit through history, true history of New York network interconnections, so we have some perspective about where we are and where we're going. So, I'll hit that button. Okay. Just briefly, who can tell me what these two buildings are? What are these two buildings? Well, there are a lot of different things, but what are they? I think we know them, yeah? We're pretty familiar with those two buildings. Iconic Art Deco, built in the late 20s, brick, some clay duct in there. Okay, well, we could call them carrier hotels. Some people actually have referred to them as data centers, which I think is kind of funny. I've never seen anybody build a 1 million square foot brick building data center, but it just sort of happened there. The true answer, okay, to what these two buildings are, is that they're the first two email servers ever built, right there, downtown. And what's fascinating about it, because the two buildings were built to process messages in and out, and they were the two distinct, disparate networks, majority networks, in the country. Western Union was actually a roll-up play. It was an M&A strategy in the late 1800s to unionize all the telegraph networks west of the Hudson River. That's where it gets its name, Western Union. It was actually originally financed by some guys out of Boston, and they bought Mississippi Valley Telegraph and then New Orleans Telegraph and some others. And they had their own distinct copper network, heavy gauge copper. And all those copper lines ran back to 60 Hudson. And then, of course, AT&T is American Telephone and Telegraph, still is today. A lot of people don't know that second T is Telegraph. And they had a similar thing under the Bell patent for copper, heavy gauge copper lines in a completely disparate footprint in the United States. And if you wanted to send a telegram from a Western Union office to an AT&T office from one part of the country to another, and it was pure incumbency, they didn't have overlap in their footprints back then because it was just wide open. The message would originate, let's say, for example, in New Orleans on Western Union, and it was bound for Chicago on AT&T, it would get routed through New York. And it wouldn't just get routed electronically like we would all think. It actually got reduced to paper and got put into a canister and sent through a pneumatic tube from one building down to the basement and then up 7 blocks or down 7 blocks, depending on the direction, to the other building, and then routed within the building to a room on a floor that was the representation of that network head end that represented that part of the country. And that's how telegrams moved around the United States, which were basically paper versions of email in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Of course, these buildings were built by the same guy, Ralph Walker, who worked for Voorhees Walker, which is an architectural engineering firm out of Newark, New Jersey. And he designed these two buildings. And another interesting thing about the history of this is that every Bell Central office downtown in the center of town is brick because of these two buildings. This is the alpha and the beta. Every brick CO is brick because of these two. And the reason why they're brick is because the original Western Union building, which was about 10 blocks south, was made of wood, and it was painted with this fireproof polyurethane. And it burned to the ground in about 3 seconds. And all communications in North America and the US were knocked out for many, many months before it could get rebuilt. So the idea was to, quote unquote, not get burned again. Sorry the bad pun. So they decided to build a brick building. And that's where these two things came from. So let's get into the root of what email actually looked like back in these days in the early 1900s. These are actually pictures I found in the archives, okay, for telegraph pneumatic tubes between 60 Hudson and 32 Avenue of the Americas. This is what the basement used to look like. Anybody that's done work down there like Ray, I know Ray's done it. Srihari knows what this looks like too. There's all these conduit systems, and they're actually sending and receiving canisters with paper messages. And this is what the original meet room looked like. It would be called the Tube Center. And they were in the basement of those two buildings. And that's how they routed messages back and forth. You can see here, this is how email was delivered, which is kind of interesting, electronic actual physical mail, being inserted in these different torpedo tubes and sent back and forth. Very efficient system. So that's what cross connects looked like in the early 1900s. Fascinating, right? She's a tech, and she's running cross connects. She's jumpers. She's taking a canister from here and putting it over there and routing messages. If you think about all the protocols that we have today for routing messages, right, SMTP or whatever, that's what it looked like in a binary sense back in the day. So this is actually a telephone cross-connect. I had a telegraph cross-connect picture, and I want to explain the distinction between the two, but I couldn't put it up here because the resolution wasn't good enough. But the telegraph cross-connect, the switch, and there's actually murals of this on the walls in the lobby of 60 Hudson Street. If anybody's ever interested, go and check it out. It's like, it should be in the Smithsonian. But before the electric switch was created, they routed, manually. Then they created a switch that actually took two copper lines and they like twisted pair that connected it together. And then they created something in around about 1940 that looked like an early predecessor to a DAX, if you know what a DAX is. I know Harold knows what a DAX is. We did a lot of work with DAXs back in the day. So those were wires that were actually connected to each other on boards in a really big box, giant box. But you see what they're doing as switchboard operators. This is a telephone. Different technology, different patents, and really ultimately how Bell beat out Western Union because they extended phones into homes, which created the last mile problem, but it solved the proximity issue going to telegraph stations. But you could look at these operators and what's different about them than a telegraph switch operator. And it's pretty clear it's the headset. The jumpers used to be run for telegraphs, but it was all zeros and ones basically. So there's nothing to listen to when you patched it in. The original telegraph operator had to listen and then transcribe. You didn't have to do that anymore. The telephone operators, they're actually listening to people speak to them and patching the wires together to set up calls. But they were the original version of the NSA. And you would actually just sit there and listen to people's phone calls.
That's right.
Okay, so Western Union Building, my favorite place. I learned a lot from this building. It doesn't talk, but it taught me a lot. So what you saw in the preceding slides was a copper version of early days, pneumatic tube version of telegraph. Just before that, it was smoke signals. I didn't have any pictures of those there. Then you had pneumatic tubes, then you had wiring, actual manual switching, and then all of that in this building eventually evolved into this. This is a picture of the original Telex Meet Me area on the west side, and you can see our techs back in the day, my old techs at Telex, were wiring things, and there's a whole lot going on in this picture. This is back when we actually let active elements into the Meet Me area. You can see there's a MUX there, bottom left. That was actually Global Crossings, Cisco 454. And there's a mix of DSX 1, DS3s, and fiber. So this picture actually shows a little bit of transition from the legacy copper sub-rate breakouts, transitioning into fiber. But the point is, okay, change is the only constant. Keep that in mind. Change is the only constant. Everything's always changing, but the thing that remains the same is the need to communicate. And if there's one thing that's a theme throughout this whole thing, is the need to communicate. It goes back to smoke signals, sound, pneumatic tubes, copper wires, transitioning to fiber. But here we have technicians running jumpers. That's no different than what they were doing back in the day, connecting phone lines or telegraph lines or even handing off pneumatic tube cylinders. It's the same, but it's different, okay? This is another shot. This is actually from the 23rd floor telex facility way back when. And you can see in the far back on the left, T1s, then DS3s, and then fiber. I mean, that's literally like the rings of a tree right there in that one shot. Today, nobody's installing DS3s or DS1s. Nobody. It's all gone. I don't even see anybody installing Cat 5.6. It's all fiber. So there's been a big transition even in the last 15 years to optics in the core. And then the final shot here is the meeting area on the east side. I mean, I had another picture here where this showed the racks were empty and now they're all full, and I think everybody gets the point. But a lot of times when you walk into facilities like this, nobody knows where it all came from. They just think that it's always been there, and that's not the case. Those pictures I just showed you were all empty rooms, and now, you know, there's something like 50,000 cross connects just there on the 9th floor at 60 Hudson Street. Of course, all that telex has now become this digital realty. And digital realty on the building side, right, so ownership of the buildings themselves, which is something that I understand and appreciate. That was, you know, a deal that Telex did with Digital many years ago to acquire their meet me rooms, and now Digital has acquired fully Telex and integrated it. I think that's a very important point. When you think about communications going back to Western Union, they owned the entire building, the pneumatic tubes, the copper lines, and the entire network. They had their own distinct infrastructure separate and apart from AT&T, and there needed to be a way to connect those two things. So it's funny, that was all sort of broken apart, technologically speaking, and it all has come back together again. And we see this oscillation happen over decades. Again, change is the only constant. There's another layer of this, though, you know, beyond the physical layer, buildings, and the physical layer, fiber presence and interconnections. So there's a new kid on the block here in New York that sort of has an idea about how this all works in terms of ownership of the building and the meet me room combined, and with a heavy focus on just physical layer interconnections. That company is called Neutrality, and this is the Neutrality Properties building here, 325 Hudson Street in New York, which happens to be one of the locations where DE-CIX has a presence. So I'd like to thank Harold, if you're listening, and Ivo and Ed and the whole DE-CIX crew for being a part of that exciting movement there. This is, you know, new. When you say new Carrier Hotel, it was a building that was acquired in April 2012 by partnership with myself and the Miramar Properties, and then our equity partner, Jamestown, who happens to be actually based out of Germany. And Josh Mays is here somewhere today. Josh is in the back. He's with the Miramar. So we resurrected my old Telex meet me room model and inserted it here with common building and meet me room ownership. So I just threw up the Axiom fiber map as one of the fiber providers in the city. There are many out there, but it's the one that I had readily available. Just the point that I wanted to highlight here in terms of the history of connectivity in New York City is that there's some pretty well-known addresses there. A couple of the new ones, 375 Pearl Savvy, it's got Dan, Dan's in the room. That's a new building, essentially, but that was a former Verizon building, same kind of concept. And then, of course, 325 Hudson Street added to 60 and 32, which were the first two that I showed you the buildings of, which we all know. And, of course, 111 8th Avenue, which Google now owns. But from a passive fiber connectivity standpoint, you know, you're looking at the best buildings in town. And certainly 325 Hudson Street in the last 24 months, we've brought in over 12,000 strands from every franchise holder in the city. So thank you, Cliff and Ray and Trihari and everybody in the room for being a part of that. So I'd be remiss in not mentioning this because DE-CIX does have a presence in New Jersey. And if we're talking about the history of connectivity and the evolution of connectivity in the region, we need to pay attention to New Jersey because things have changed. And I just got this map from a friend of mine, and it just gives a very high level of how many data centers there are. 165 Halsey Street is notably absent from this, which is because the guy I got it from is a real estate guy that focuses on data centers. But you have to add Halsey Street out of respect. But none of this existed. There weren't any of these facilities 15 years ago. Nobody even thought about going to New Jersey. And now there are more facilities and more square feet and more megawatts in New Jersey than there are in Manhattan. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but it has a lot to do with migration, tying back into what Ed talked about earlier about the round trip to Ashburn. The carrier hotels in the city aren't necessarily where the servers go. They're not supposed to. It's too expensive. The buildings weren't built for it. The servers go to data centers, and data centers always hive around meet points, always. They're always satellites to meet points. And in their own right, over time, they acquire their own physical layer fiber routes in and out, and they become sort of interconnection points. But the owners of those data center properties aren't focused on the interconnection business. The interconnection business is very unique. It's for carrier hotels primarily, and the people that own those and understand how those work. So I just wanted to put this up here because it's important to note that the whole region has expanded dramatically. This is a list of all those sites, and I didn't want to sit here and just like add it all up, but the number of square feet is staggering. And that's just this New Jersey market. And it's an outgrowth of those first two big brick buildings that I showed you in less than 80 years. Pretty impressive, pretty amazing stuff. And of course, DE-CIX has a presence. Now, to touch on DE-CIX and a little nod to Ed here, and what a great job Ed has done in the region, in the New Jersey region. This is just an IX growth chart and how many new members that DE-CIX has added. Not an aggregate total, but we had asked for the slide, and Ed, thank you for getting that over. I'll make note of one thing on this, putting aside some of the quote-unquote competition, but the Big Apple Peering Exchange is actually something I helped Srihari put together back in the Telex days. That's 14 years ago now. We had a notion of the need for an internet exchange, but I want to touch on what Ed was asked by Harold, which is how have you been successful here? Is that you're independent, but that you have a focus on peering. That's what you do. You come from Frankfurt, you perfected it there, you have all the major network operators as peers, as members, and trusted partners. And you bring the concept here, and it takes time, but you execute. And the independence is the focus on being an IX, but not also having to own the building or own the space and run the colo part of it to then do the IX part of it. And I think the European models worked out really well as a result. I've always seen that it was better. It attracted a lot of tenants to the landlord, so the landlord did well to have a really good IX or a node like that. If they tried to do it on their own, they usually didn't do the best job. So hats off to you, Ed, for getting those numbers where they are and helping New York solve its problem. And then I just wanted to put that last slide up there real quick. This is the evolution of peering and the evolution of network interconnection in New York and New Jersey. And these are the DE-CIX locations. I'm super happy to have one of them, 325 Hudson on the list, so thanks again for that. But notice how many are in New Jersey as the burgeoning growing market here. So again, thank you for your time. This is just a brief history on connectivity in the region. Thank you. I don't know if we have questions, Tom, but yeah, I could field a couple questions if anybody had any. I'm sure that this room's full of very, it's like super, well, Sophie's here now. She's got a couple questions. All right. Well, thank you again. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming.
So now we're going to do a little video break in between each of these. So you'll see one of our videos starting momentarily.
The DE-CIX journey. The more of travel, all of you, please come with me. stop is where everything began, 20 years ago. Today, the capital of telecommunications in Europe and the capital of Applewine. Welcome to Frankfurt.
Hallo zusammen und herzlich willkommen beim DE-CIX Customer Summit. Mein Name ist Andreas Sturm und ich bin der Head of Business Development. I'm accountable for plan, market and direct our business development team and accountable for all 11 DE-CIX operations and especially my baby DE-CIX Frankfurt. Thank you for your attention and have a nice day and enjoy the Customer Summit. Bye.
What do you think we're going to fly to now? It's a very hot place. It's the place to be in the Middle East, lifestyle, pearls, boats, shopping, and the hottest interconnection environment there. Welcome to Dubai.
Hello from Austria. My name is Marco Balchata and I'm doing business development at DE-CIX for the UA Exchange in Dubai. We're the biggest internet exchange in the Middle East, with having 50 members and a traffic peak of 60 gigabit per second. Yeah, and I wish you lots of fun, great presentations at our DE-CIX Summit in New York, Munich and Istanbul. See you there.
So now we're going to go into an overview both of what's happening in North America. And then Evo's going to stand up and tell us what's happening in the rest of the world. As everyone knows, we're live in New York and now in Dallas for about 3 weeks now. I thought the best way to go through this was to do a time, look at a time positioning here. So we launched, move this back here. We started in New York essentially with the launch, with an announcement at the end of 2013 that would be live. DE-CIX was coming to New York. And we went live. We had our event March 27th, I think it was, and then we actually, our first package went in May. In fact, May we were still not all our switches were online, so it was kind of a partial launch even there. We had we started out, and as you've seen, with switches throughout Manhattan and 165 Halsey. And again, this is a function of having to serve as much of the market as possible. We had 100 access points, even with from the beginning. The next thing that happened is that we added a switch at 375 Pearl. We decided that building was growing enough and it was a good enough move for us to move in there. And that was again October. As of year end, essentially, we hit 50 networks. So it was a pretty big milestone, having come that far in less than a year. In February, I believe it was, we decided that as a neutral player, we had already met most of the requirements for OpenIX certification. So we took the plunge and became OpenIX certified. As of May, we did a deal with to put a switch in the second switch in New Jersey at core site NY2. We continued our expansion there through as we saw that facility grow. In June, we took our first step, as required actually by the OpenIX certification, to create a customer advisory board. I think this was, I think we're the first exchange in the area to have done such. It was a great move. It helped put us in closer touch with the market and with people who could help guide us. In August of that year, we further extended, as you saw in Hunter's slide, so that we could address the data centers of Equinix 2.4 in Secaucus and Equinix NY7 in North Bergen. As of December, we made an announcement that we've been successful enough in New York, and we've seen the success that we'd move into Dallas. That was December of last year. In January, we hit 100 networks. I always thought this was the mark that needed to be for an exchange to really make it in New York, 100 networks. So it was nice to have made it in January. In April, we launched the first of its kind, our Globe Peer remote service. And this was a service that allows our customers in either Frankfurt or New York to readily and easily connect on a very granular basis on diverse paths to the other exchange. So it's essentially a turnkey peering at another one of our exchanges. And it's a first of its kind in adding more services to our platform. As of September, we've launched in Dallas. September 15th was our launch of Dallas, and we started with 10 networks actually, and we now have 11. So it's going quite well for a 3-week-old exchange. In October, we've hit essentially now 140 networks on our exchange in New York, and we have a pretty big pipeline too. So you'll see that number continue to grow. I'm especially happy to have essentially all the global content. Facebook went live this week, and that was the last of the big global content players to join the exchange. So we're very happy to have all the big content. In October, we've also made a decision to add another board member. And we figured we could use additional support. So we've asked Carl Williams of Linode to join us. Carl, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Carl will be a 4th member of our board. And he's had great experience in peering. You're in London, Frankfurt, many locations besides, of course, New York and Dallas. So
yeah, Asia Pac, Europe, US. North America.
Great addition, thank you. And then, of course, we're going to have our launch event in a week. 6 days. It's next Wednesday night in Dallas. So with that, I want to take you just through some of our data center development. We initially started, call it phase 1, and you've seen some of the slides from Hunter already, but we hit the buildings that made sense when we moved in, and again with access points to many data centers within those buildings. So it's really a subset just to look at buildings. But 32 A of A, 60 Hudson, 111 8th, and 165 Halsey, and of course 325 Hudson were on the initial list. But since then, again, we've added 375 Pearl and CoreSite NY2, and then of course into New Jersey, the Equinix Facility Access. But really what we're calling phase 3 here, we've also teamed up with resellers who are data center owners. And so we have, whether it's New York Internet at 999 Frontier, I think it is in Bridgewater, or whether it's WebAir out in Franklin Street in Garden City, networks can now come in those data centers and connect us readily there. So we're continuing to extend and make peering more available to more and more of the market. In Dallas, we're doing the same thing, just starting in one building. So in Dallas, we've launched with our core in Zayo and a switch in Cologix. We're already, and we provide access in Via West and Equinix DA1 and DA3. And we've already started our expansion there by adding the new InfoMart meeting room data center in the building. So if any of you know the Dallas 1950, it's quite tough to get around data center to data center. So this is a big addition, and it really very much allows peering access to locations where it was next to impossible to have it before. And with that, we'll bring up Ivo to talk about what's going on worldwide.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. Thank you. Thank you. So just how it should work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Move away from the.
Yeah.
Probably I should do this. Let's start getting better.
Yep, not working.
This was the only one solution.
Grab the next one.
Try the next one. Yeah.
And if not, we'll do this. So I hope this. Oh yeah, sounds better. Sorry for that. My name is Ivo Ivanov. I do represent the DE-CIX International today, responsible for strategic development of DE-CIX outside of Germany. And I just want to give you a brief update on what we have done over the past years. DE-CIX International started in 2012. The first engagement outside of Germany was in the Middle East. You saw already a couple of details about Dubai. I will talk about Dubai and the Gulf region just in a minute. And then we developed a lot of new presences around the globe. Today, DE-CIX International runs internet exchanges in 7 different metro regions, including New York and Dallas, as you already heard. And there are activities of DE-CIX International on 4 different continents around the globe. If you count the networks connected to all presences of DE-CIX International today, there are more than 400 networks with a current peak of traffic of 350 gigabit per second. In each region, DE-CIX tries to create and support the creation of a healthy, better interconnection ecosystem. There are different regions. Dubai, for instance, and New York, they couldn't be more different as they are. But both regions have challenges. In Dubai, we do have a very close, restrictive environment. In New York, fragmented environment with the challenges if it comes to competition to North Virginia and to Ashburn, Virginia. And this is what we want to improve here, to concentrate the connectivity and the interconnection business back to the city. In Dubai, we were involved in the creation of an ecosystem for a scratch, for example. This is the next slide. If you wanna walk you through, it started in 2012 with an engagement of the Telecoms Regulatory Authority. It was a completely different environment. We all cannot believe how difficult was it just to have a duopoly on site with a closed ecosystem. Nobody can get in. If you want to get out, you have to pay a lot of money for the international connectivity. So we started 2012 with an exchange, convincing the guys there to create a so-called free zone for international network operators, which was a unique setup there. Free zone means that international networks were able, without the need of any license, to establish a presence there, to connect to the exchange, and to start interconnection business. Without the need of any license, without any restrictions to the ownership of the equipment, and without any restrictions on filtering, which is extremely important for this part of the world. So 4 years later, the exchange has connected almost 60 networks today. There are exactly 58. And the traffic exchange today in a peak is around 60 gigabit per second. 60 gigabit per second doesn't sound really good for the New York perspective or Frankfurt, Europe perspective, but for this part of the world, when we're talking about an internet exchange in a Gulf region, this is unique. And even more important is a great mix of networks which have been concentrated there. There are inbound networks, outbound networks, a lot of regional networks connected to the exchange, and also international network operators who do serve the global community, content delivery networks, live streams of TV shows we all love and know. And all these networks enjoy the regional interconnection. So, and this is, with this story, I want to tell you in a summary
what is the mandate of DE-CIX International? The mandate of DE-CIX International is to create healthy ecosystems around the globe, as we were able to do in Dubai, in the exchange in Dubai, at new networks every single week. The next approach was done, we started 2 years ago and completed last year. So we decided to create new exchanges in the Mediterranean region. If it comes to hotspots for interconnection today, but more probably in the future, we talk about Marseille. Marseille is a very important hotspot if it comes to sea cable connectivity, especially new sea cable systems like CMV5 or EA1, which will land and be demarcated in a close proximity to exchange without further costs for all content networks, European and American, international content networks who want to exchange traffic closer with networks to the edge in Africa or Asia. So this is the story around Marseille and Palermo in France and Italy. And we did Istanbul. Istanbul is a city with a great potential. Why? Because the domestic market in Turkey is large enough to have an internet exchange. There was no internet exchange in the city. There are 80+ million population in Turkey, and if we look at the neighboring countries, so huge markets, untapped markets like Iran, Iraq, the Caspian region, so we believe that Istanbul can play an important role for interconnection in this part of the world. And a nice fact about the history of internet exchanges: in Istanbul, DE-CIX created the first distributed internet exchange on 2 continents at the same time. Because, as you're aware of, Istanbul is a city based on 2 continents, Europe and Asia. They have 3 bridges now, so it's the first distributed internet exchange on 2 continents at the same time. That's for your Wikipedia record. And the next step was done early this year, DE-CIX Madrid. DE-CIX Madrid was done because of a lot of requests from the community, even from the local community in Spain, but more from European and international community. They asked us if we want to improve the situation there. There is an internet exchange in Spain, Hispanix, but the community and a lot of networks operators were not happy with the quality there. So we decided to improve the situation and started operations in Madrid in May this year. And after 3 months of operations, the exchange has already 60 networks connected, which makes Madrid the fastest growing internet exchange in the globe. Within less than 3 months of operations, we got 60 networks connected, and we're very happy about this. DE-CIX started DE-CIX International started engagement in Africa as well a couple of years ago, not with own operations. We just helped a consortium of 5 operators on the west coast of Africa in Angola to set up a new exchange, which is Angonix, and now Angonix is the 3rd largest internet exchange in the African continent, following South Africa and Kenya. This is a good progress. We believe that Africa and the African different ecosystems in Africa will need an improvement in the interconnection ecosystem. This will come automatically with a demand of traffic interconnection locally, and we will support this, especially if it comes to the need to exchange traffic on the west, on the east coast, sub-Saharan Africa, North Africa, locally. We're working on that, and this is a long run, but we accepted that challenge already 3 years ago, and we're pretty optimistic that there is a big need for new internet exchanges, robust internet exchanges on the African continent. So in summary, we try to provide a helping hand to different regions, to different communities around the globe, to create healthy, efficient, and effective ecosystems for interconnection, because it's all about the quality of interconnection, especially if we talk about costs on the one hand of the operators, and on the other hand, a better user experience. Today, we all want to enjoy cloud applications, content on the internet, like sports, games, TV shows in the best quality possible. This is not possible without excellent interconnection and interconnection ecosystems. So this is our mandate, and thank you all for supporting us in different presences of DE-CIX around the globe, and especially in New York. Thanks for your attention and a great summit. Now I'll hand over back to our MC of the day, Mr. D'Agostino. Ed.
Thank you. We're going to look at a video right now. Video break.
If you make it here, you will make it everywhere. Welcome to DE-CIX New York.
Greetings to attendees of the DE-CIX Summit. I'm Ed D'Agostino, responsible for DE-CIX North America, and I'm here to talk about our New York exchange. DE-CIX New York was established less than 2.5 years ago as the first fully neutral and distributed exchange in the New York market. We built out a great network with over 100 access points, and our neutrality, as well as our relationship with our resellers, allowed us to become the fastest growing exchange in New York. And now, less than 2.5 years later, with 135 networks, and many more coming. So we'll be able to add value, not only now, but utter more value to our customer base. Hope you have a great summer. Thank you. Thanks. We have another technical difficulty, apparently. Our moderator is stuck in traffic. So, so we're going to change. If you guys are okay, and move console up to right now. Just a quick history of console with us. Console is IX Reach and IIX, and DE-CIX has had a long partnership with both, especially IX Reach. They're, I believe, our biggest reseller for a long time. And they've, of course, expanded into console now, so we've asked them to join us. Greg Morelli.
Thanks, appreciate it. Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Greg Morelli. I run the East Coast for console. This is Ian Morowitz. He runs the carrier group out of Philly. So what we want to accomplish today is just tell you a little bit about console. What we do, why people use us, right, and what our differentiators are. Okay, and then also talk a little bit about the time the connections up. So, anyway, so just to get you a little bit familiar, we were formed back in 2011. We're based out of the Silicon Valley. We have people in offices here in North America, up in Canada, throughout Europe, Asia Pac, and Australia. One of the really great things is that we have 170 POPs that are around the globe that are already interconnected. Okay, and what that means to our clients is they can get instant connections to their critical applications, to their business partners, and into their other data centers through this console that we put together. So just in regards to a couple of things, right, with respect to the internet traffic and the cloud. Companies are moving their cloud applications, right, or their applications into the cloud, and according to Gartner, the average enterprise client today has 24 cloud applications. Okay, and the challenge with that becomes a couple of things. Number one, from a security perspective, how do you access that, right? If you're going to go through the internet, you have some security concerns, okay, which can be challenging. We help solve those concerns, right, by offering private connectivity into hundreds and hundreds of applications that are out there today. So your AWSs, your Googles, your Microsofts, Dropboxes, you name it, LinkedIn, Salesforce, all those kind of applications that are out there today. So the other challenge that clients have is really around performance. So everyone knows if you're gonna move these applications out to the cloud, right, you're gonna want them really to perform well for you. So if you do that through the internet, it can be unpredictable, right? It could be slow at times. So what we're really offering, around that is direct private connections, into those. And the reason why it's important is because you can get predictable performance, right? And one of the things that's really great about the interface that we have is that you can get performance information, and you can also make changes in real time, which is really great. So why are we different than some of the other players that are out there today? Well, we do a couple of things different, right? You can get private connectivity from carriers, right, which is great and works well. But what we're offering is a layer 2 service as well as a layer 3 service, right? So when you're going layer 3, sometimes it becomes a challenge to get the ASN numbers, and our platform offers automatic ASN numbers, so it cuts out a pretty significant step. So again, if you want to get and connect into your big applications like your AWSs of the world, and let's say you start out with a connection and you want to move the traffic, you can do that. If you want to split it up, you can do that. So what in essence what you're really getting with us is a large port, and then the control and visibility to do what you want with it anywhere around the globe. And again, it's around to those 170 POPs that are around the globe, which is really key. So what makes it really interesting with our partnership here is that we are connected into 2 major cities, right here in New York and then over in Germany, and those customers can access into our platform very easily. So there's thousands of networks, right, that are connected into that internet exchange, and they can connect in to those points to get out to all those applications, which really makes it really special. Do you wanted to add anything? Ryan?
Just to add a couple of things. If a company, whether it's an enterprise network,
maybe get closer.
Enterprise network service provider, could be a network service provider or an enterprise account wants to connect in the console. Once they set up, it'll be like LinkedIn. Some of us want to connect to each other on LinkedIn. Think of it as LinkedIn for business, where you can see somebody else that's on console. You want to reach out to them. You click a button, you connect to them, you can communicate with them, you can order from them. If it's AWS, you want to connect in us with a 1 gig circuit and you want 500 megs to AWS. So within console, once you have your profile set up, you'll see the AWS person. You just literally, at the click of a button, because it's fully automated, think of it as what would take your IT department 30 to 45 days to accomplish, you can do in 5 minutes. And by connecting to AWS through the portal, within 5 minutes you'll be able to ping AWS, they get notified, you want 500 megs turned up, as long as you accept the T's and C's, they accept it on their end, we turn up a VLAN that quick. So that's what we're doing today with DE-CIX. We have a fabulous relationship with DE-CIX here in New York City and in Germany, over in Frankfurt, and what we're doing today is bring so many customers that connect in any of our 170 data centers back to DE-CIX at the click of a button. We can do that with AWS, with Microsoft Azure, Software, or Salesforce.com. There's just thousands of companies within our ecosystem that we've built globally, and it's all about scalability. So if you have that 500 megs to AWS and you want 300 megs to Azure and a couple hundred megs over to DE-CIX, you can scale it. You can take the 500 megs down from AWS and point it somewhere else. You have total control of what you want to do without picking up the phone and calling a sales guy and say, hey, I need place an order. And that's the value proposition of using console.
Okay. With that, are there any questions?
Do people use peering exchanges to access it? Is your accessible over a peering exchange?
Yeah.
Do you require a VLAN on the exchange to come in from? We support not for VLANs, but how would our other customers
potentially establish connections? What would be the process?
It's really just like simple cross connect from within DE-CIX. Anyone wants to connect to us within DE-CIX to anybody to somewhere else. I mean that's.
So they're already on our fabric. Would it be over just a standard peering connection? How would that happen?
Yeah, I mean it's all extended. I mean again it's either layer 2 or layer 3 control.
And then within the tool itself, right, there's a drop-down box that tells you exactly what you can connect into once you get into the network and access into it.
Question for you.
Sure.
Your whole network of all these 170 POPs, this is all Ethernet connectivity, right? In any of them, can you convert that Ethernet to SONET?
That's a great question, which I don't know. I'd have to ask the technical
For example,
folks
if I
on.
wanted to connect to an ILEC that still connects on TDM level.
Yeah, you could do that through, our peering point or our POP. You could do that through where our POP sits and do a cross connect. So as long as we're in that particular POP, right, you can do a cross connect into another network, if that's what you're asking.
You can convert the signaling from Ethernet?
That I would have to ask, our technical folks and get back to you because I don't know. But I'll definitely get back to you on that. Any other questions? Okay. All right, great. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Do you want to see how a C cable does look like? Yes? Then jump with me. Jump to Marseille.
Bonjour à tous et bienvenue. My name is Céline Gutna and I'm responsible for DE-CIX Marseille. In Marseille, DE-CIX has built a rapid growing exchange with 30 networks today, and we are expecting 40 plus networks by the end of the year. From the targeted regions, Africa, Middle East and Asia. Bugün muhtemelen İstanbul'dayımdır. Katıldığınız için çok teşekkürler. Görüşmek üzere. Tschüss, enjoy the summit. Au revoir.
Tom.
Another change in schedule here. So with continued traffic delays, Tom Martinson's going to tell us about Rainbow Broadband. Tom's the CTO. Made the trip in from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
In Minnesota, yeah. Yep.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. So,
Let me take this.
yeah. Okay. Let's see if we turn it on. Okay, this will work.
Flip it up.
It is up.
Look right there.
Anyone?
Yep,
Okay.
yeah.
So, yeah, my name's Tom and I'm with Rainbow Broadband. So today we're going to talk about how Rainbow goes about connecting tech-savvy businesses in New York. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. I'll give you a little bit of background. Okay. Give you a little bit of background.
Hold it closer to your mouth.
A little bit of background on Rainbow. So in 2005 is when Rainbow was founded. And there was a need in the market. All you could get was pretty much T1s and DS3s. Both were expensive. Nothing really fit the price model. So Rainbow came out with a 10 megabit Ethernet using licensed point-to-point microwave. It's fast to deploy, provides very good service. We fast forward to today. Current competition market, you have the low-end providers from the incumbents doing in the hundreds. You can get 300, 500 meg on the download, something on the upload on a shared congested network. Or we have some competitors out there that are in the 1 gig fiber to the business. Rainbow, we start at the 1 gig, we move up into the 10 gig. So this is where we are in 2016, where we compete. Sorry, I don't understand technology. So we're currently available in 300 commercial buildings serving New York's leading tech and media companies. We're all over. We have a lot of high-profile customers that demand good service. We're pure Ethernet from our core to our customer. There's no DOCSIS, no DSL. We don't have any of those limitations. We provide 100 megabits to 40 gigabit symmetrical service, and we can provide 100 gigabit connections if you so desire. We are limited to 800 gigabits per customer, but that's untested. Okay, just truth in advertising. We think we can do it, but we're not positive. We use both microwave and fiber technologies to provide our service depending on what is needed and what kind of platform we have. Microwave, of course, being preferred over fiber, since microwave is generally faster. The reason being that it's faster is radio waves through the atmosphere travel faster than photons through glass. That's physics. The second thing is geometry. Point-to-point connections are faster than the fiber that has to follow the path in the road and everything like that. So we get a bonus on having less latency across our network because of the technology. I'm going to try and hit the next button. Okay. So what does networks look for? The network, what do customers expect? They expect reliability. The network needs to go up and stay up. There's no chance for it to go down, especially for business customers, because they have businesses to run. So this is the scariest thing you can ever see as a service provider. This right here gives me fear. Because Wally has his magic backhoe, and he can find any fiber that's not located. And he does. And now the fiber crews are great. They get out there, they replace the fiber. But when he grabs a 600 or 800 pound fiber and jerks it out of the ground, it's a big mess. So that's why we use a lot of microwave, is to avoid construction problems that we have. So this is our core. This is our core network. We're an L2 core in New York. We take and run massive fiber on diversity in the middle of the link. Now we have connectivity coming from our customer. We use both microwave and fiber to go to our customer. So not only do we have the physical diversity going left and right, two different data centers, we also use street level and from building top to building top with point-to-point microwave. So this isn't the Wi-Fi that your grandpa had. This is licensed microwave that like AT&T would use in the Rocky Mountain regions. Microwave is great for an alpine region, and Manhattan is an alpine region. It's just that all the mountains here are made by man. So it works out really well. So this is how we connect into our buildings. As you can see, we go from point to point, and then we put a demarc inside the building if it's a multi-tenant building that we have to service, just like you would normally do with fiber, except that we have two connections, one at the top of the building, one at the bottom of the building. And here's our fiber rings. As you can see, we're at multiple locations throughout the city. We have our BFR 0 is located at 325, and we put our BFR 1 is located at 4 Times Square. These are our fiber links. You can see our fiber that we have in our city here. And the colors, the reason why there's two different colors is those are the different providers that we get fiber from. So we just color code them. I just took a snap off the map. But we try not to follow the same path with all the fibers and get it out so that we can have good rings inside the city. Now speed. Speed is key. Speed is king. So speed across the network, 1 gig is the new normal. If you don't connect at 1 gig, you're being a service provider. That's normal today. 10 gigs is the new normal for tomorrow. So we offer symmetrical bandwidth just like everybody should. We do 1 gig, 10 gig, 40 gig, 100 gig, anything in between, all symmetrical, it's yours. We got low latency. We give low latency to our customers. Our customers like low latency. We get that through peering. So when we're across town, most of our network, if we're going to any of the DE-CIX members, we're usually under a millisecond to go from customer firewall to a DE-CIX member. So if somebody wants to go to Netflix, they're there in less than a millisecond, usually about 0.9 milliseconds. In congestion, we've engineered our network so that for the highest traffic hour of the year, we can be in a failure state and our customers would never know it. So we're zero hop crosstown EVCs because we're layer 2. We got one hop to the transit routers. You go straight from the firewall to the border router. The border router peers with either one of the tier 1 providers or peers with DE-CIX members. Our node 0 is at 325 Hudson Street. That's our primary. We really like that data center, so we kind of favor that a little bit. And of course, we're at all the other big carrier hotels in New York that everybody has to be in. Transparency. Transparency is key to providing a good relationship with your customer, right? So what does that mean to us? First of all, our AS number, 31769, you can look us up. You can search on the internet, see who we're connected to. There's truth in advertising, right? No deep packet inspections. We do not look inside your traffic to see what kind of traffic it is, what kind of emails you're sending. We don't do any traffic shaping. There's no need for us to do traffic shaping. You bought connectivity, you get the connectivity. We do not do top talkers. There are no top talkers because we don't believe in top talkers. If you buy a gig, you get a gig. Therefore, we have no usage caps. No time of day restrictions. You want the internet, you get the internet any time of day you want to use it. We have no failed DNS redirects. A lot of service providers, if you fail your DNS, will redirect you to a search page that they get money for. We don't do that. There's no preferred peers. We're totally neutral on our peering. We do not have a preferred peer list. We do not do least cost routing. What we do is we drop you on, you get to go to the internet as quickly, as efficiently as possible. Not what's cheapest for us. We just want you to have a great service, because then you don't call us. And there's no class of service or quality of service. And the reason being is, in order to have a class of service or quality of service, you have to make a decision on which packets to throw away. We don't throw away any packet. All packets are important. So we've engineered our network so we're never congested. All packets are important, and you get to move your traffic on and off. So basically it boils down to, we play no games, and we're not your big brother. We're your internet access provider. So service. Service is the next most important thing for customers. And for service, businesses measure their downtime in cost per minute. You have a business with 600 employees standing around because they can't do their work because they're a new tech media company. That is extremely expensive. So we're 24/7 automated monitoring and alerting. In the city that never sleeps, businesses never sleep, and service providers never sleep either. We can do the fully managed if the customer needs it. We can do your routers, switches, firewalls, Wi-Fi, VPN, concentrators. We don't do printers. We don't do desktop support. I can't help you with your email. We interact with other providers. Some customers want to have a primary and a backup. Some customers want to have both run BGP with you and have redundant links, so we do that. We'll help with that. There's no problems. Pre-positioned sparing, depending on which building it is. We actually put base configs on some of our equipment already at the locations. We can fire it up. We change the MAC address. You can download the config file. They're up and running in moments. Because sometimes you have a piece of equipment that's not internally high availability, you better have a spare standby. Because it's not when it's going to break, it's going to break. You just know it's going to break. Scheduled maintenances, just like every good service provider, nights, weekends, holidays. Holidays are our favorite. Usually everybody's home. If your maintenance runs a little long, there's less complaining. At Rainbow, the CTO will make house calls. So that's always a benefit for some of our customers. So here's a few of the customers that we have. We won't stay on this too long, but these are just a few of them that we have. And price. So here's the big thing about price of the internet. Price of the internet has done this over time. This is from DR Peering, and this is the price over the last 20 years for what the cost of the internet has. So as we can see, towards the tail end of this, there's not a lot. There's not a lot of cost to the internet, so there's not a lot of markup. The internet has become a commodity. Everything's down to service and speed. That's the only thing that's left to hold your business. This gives competitive access providers such as Rainbow a benefit because in the early 2000s, before the bubble burst, most of the incumbents did extremely large upgrades to their networks. They shoved in, millions of CMTSs to do DOCSIS. They threw in millions of DSLAMs to do on all this aging infrastructure because you could charge a lot of money and it was a high profit margin. That crashed. So the incumbents have to hold on to their equipment and extend the life of the technology that they use in order to generate the revenue that they had promised their shareholders and get back. Competitive guys like ourselves don't have that problem. So we're Ethernet based. We build the plant, the physical infrastructure as needed, and we can do 100 gigs. That's it. That's all I got for today. If you got any questions, feel free. Yes, sir.
The network is mostly focused here in Manhattan from 57th Street down to the Battery?
That is correct.
So is there plans to build it out, like, let's say, New Jersey or Long Island or anyplace else?
Okay, so we're currently expanding into Brooklyn and into Long Island City. And we'll have to see what happens as we go, right? We try to, if there was a market, if you would like service, if you would like to sign up, we could probably see what it would take.
I'm not your potential customer, but I'm just asking. But I have another question.
Yes.
Do you integrate with anybody else who might be a microwave provider in another area?
It depends on what you want by integration. So there's a few.
Well, I'm thinking in terms of people who still use the satellite for voice communications, and sometimes that's microwave from, let's say, Long Island, using, let's say, Metcom into the city. So would you integrate with something like that?
I wouldn't be opposed to talking to them, but
I'm sorry.
I wouldn't be opposed to having a discussion with them.
Okay.
But there's no guarantee that we would
Just ask.
do it. All right, thank you very much.
When I drink a cup of espresso, I always think about Italy. Why not flying to Italy? Let's visit DE-CIX Palermo now.
Buongiorno, hi, I'm Luisa Gomez. I'm responsible for DE-CIX Palermo. DE-CIX Palermo is quickly evolving to be the main hubs in the Mediterranean for the exchange of traffic between Africa, Europe, and the rest of the world. Palermo's proximity to the African countries provides lower latency and redundancy to the other major hubs in the Mediterranean coast.
two of the major in-demand content providers in the world are currently connected in DE-CIX Palermo. Thank you so much and have fun with our DE-CIX Summit. Bye!
Well, thanks, Tom, for that presentation. That was as an old 38 gig guy. I really like to hear that. So right now we're going to go to break, coffee break, and we'll come back with our panel. Thanks. 10 minutes. Thanks.
actually
I just want to take away the pain.
Where are you based? Well, he's in Minnesota, so.
10 days there is 20 minutes.
So I want to call the
Connectivity to anywhere under the asphalt and beyond the buildings, panelists to go with that. Great. So whenever you're ready.
Okay, everyone, try to get going again. Sports fans, let's go. Maybe get. Can everybody take their seats, please? We can get going again. And our connectivity panel will be on next, so if the guys on the panel can come here and get connectivity.
Who knows connectivity better than you, man? I'm just going to refer any question to you. Console, Megaport. Console, Zayo, Megaport. Zayo, Megaport, console. I'm not on this one? No, I'm on this one. Me and Jolie are on this one.
Okay, so we're going to watch a video now, and then we'll start with our panel in a second.
No sound? Okay, no sound. Okay, let's just go right into that. Hang on, yeah, just a moment.
Okay, so now we're going to start our first panel. It's connectivity to anywhere, under the asphalt and beyond the buildings. We've got Ray LaChance, CEO of Zen5. We have Srihari Pandit, CEO of Stealth, and Cliff Kane, CEO of Clearup. And mine. Welcome.
Good morning. Ah, come on, guys. Good morning. Good morning. Come on, we're going to do a panel. Hello. I am Monica Link. I am the editor-in-chief of NewYorkCityWire.com, if you guys want to check it out. Some of you guys may know me from the New York Observer, so I've covered wiring and communication and that kind of thing. So we'll get the panel rolling. So if you guys can all come up here. So we're going to be chatting for a little while about connectivity to anywhere, under the asphalt and beyond the buildings. So I'm just going to let them get settled in here. I'll tell you a little bit more about New York City Wire while they're getting set up. We cover the business of tech, so basically everything that you guys do from a business standpoint, and we try to translate it to our readers. We have a lot of startups and a few people in the city who do that. So we're gonna get the ball rolling here. Thank you, gentlemen. So I'll let you guys just do a quick intro of yourself, if we can go just down the road, and you guys can just give I know you guys have been introed and everybody in the room kind of knows you, but just give us a little bit more.
Okay, so I'm Cliff Kane. Is this mic working? Good. Okay. Does everybody hear me? Okay. Yep. So I'm Cliff Kane, the co-CEO of Clearing Fiber Networks. We are a New York City-based dark fiber network and Ethernet provider. We recently acquired Pangea Networks, so we've expanded our footprint into New Jersey. We cover most of the New York and New Jersey data centers with Ethernet or fiber connectivity or both.
Hi, I'm Srihari.
Oh, sorry. Hand it over, sorry. Just hold it up.
Hi, I'm Srihari Pandit with Stealth Communications. My wife and I started this business back in 1995, and predominantly we're an internet service provider here in New York City. In 2013, we were granted a franchise with the city, and with that, we started laying our own fiber optic cables underground to provide businesses here in the city cost-effective, gigabit internet access. Today, we're in just over 300 commercial properties in Manhattan, and in Brooklyn, we're constructing a new underground system that'll wire up over 60 city blocks, in the Sunset Park, IBZ area. And that's about it.
Hi, I'm Ray LaChance, CEO and co-founder of a company called Zen5 Networks. We're based here in New York City. We began the business about 2.5 years ago to focus on building fiber optic networks, specifically throughout New York, with some reach into New Jersey to focus on one of the biggest challenges we think facing telecom today, and that's the capacity and coverage problems that the mobile wireless carriers were having. One of the things that they're going to need to do is put antennas any and everywhere, whether it's on a pole top, a rooftop, street furniture, sub-basements, or every floor of every office building in New York City. Ultimately, each one of those locations are going to have host their own cell site. Each one of those cell sites are going to require three things. They're going to require space to put the antenna, power to the antenna, and they're also going to require connectivity. So when we came up with the concept of Zenfi Networks, we decided to focus on creating underlying neutral infrastructure to make it easier for carriers like AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, and T-Mobile, and some internet providers, or internet companies, to place antennas and create mobile wireless networks and effectively densify their networks. And the next phase of wireless coming, 5G, requires highly dense networks with low latency, so that requires a new infrastructure. We believe the legacy infrastructures that have been built over the years are not adequately architected to support this densification effort. So that's what we're doing with Zenfi. Currently, we have about 500 or 600 sites connected in New York City. We expect to grow this to tens of thousands over the next 4 to 5 years, and we think it's a great opportunity. Thanks for having us. For me.
All right, I'm going to have you hold on to that mic for the next question since you got it kind of started. I wanted to start you guys out with asking about the future of connectivity in 2017, and I'll have each one of you answer how you guys think the landscape of connectivity is going to change in 2017 and what you guys see coming ahead. And I'll start with you, Ray, since you got the mic.
Great, thanks, Monica. Well, look, I'm surely an advocate of wireless everywhere. I think ultimately we're going to see the broadband connections into the homes, the apartments, the mobile vehicles being done wirelessly, of course. But there's this fallacy that a wireless network is going to eliminate the need for wires. But the reality is it's going to drive a huge demand for wired connectivity. And as I had explained earlier, we think the networks will be architected with fiber to the antenna to aggregation points, and then massive backhaul from those aggregation points. So we think there's a re-architecture of the network to support wireless that will happen starting now through 2025.
What we're seeing is, starting from last year, an uptake in gigabit connectivity for businesses. So again, my perspective is really on businesses and internet connectivity. But we're seeing the norm is definitely gigabit, and it's kind of fascinating because gigabit now looks like this T1s, from the 1995, and we're starting to see people interested in multi-gigabit or 10 gigabit. So it wouldn't surprise me. T3s will be like the new 10 gig, and the T1s are basically a gigabit. But predominantly for our business, the smallest links we sell nowadays is just gigabit, and so that's the entry-level products that people are looking to buy. So we continue to see that growing.
So from Clearion's perspective, 2017 is kind of a very short window. We're on top of 2017 already. So what we're really positioning for is densification, and that's across the spectrum of wired and wireless connectivity. We believe that our position in the market as a neutral carrier, in some cases a carrier's carrier, but in other cases direct to large enterprise. We're going to be seeing a lot more fiber being built, proving a lot because the streets of New York City are very congested with fiber already. But we believe there's going to be a massive amount of construction coming 2017 and beyond, not just for wireless with the advent of 5G starting to pick up some speed, but also just for the incredible amount of increased bandwidth that's hitting or is being required by businesses and carriers all through our area.
Okay, and I'll shoot another question at you guys. You guys have all talked about connectivity and the things that are going on. What are some of the challenges that you guys have faced in your business operations, and what solutions have happened in order to overcome some of those challenges for next year and for the next 5 years? And I'll start with you again, Ray.
Oh, sure. Okay, so the challenges of building networks in New York are really about congestion and about cost. It's really driven, there's a great duct system that It goes underneath the city streets, and I think many people here are probably familiar with that. But it's very congested, and it's hard to manage. So primary challenge number one for building any fiber in this town is really the duct system and the expense of dealing with that. The second challenges are really kind of downstream from there, but you talk about cost because of congestion. Congestion could cause you to go around the route that you originally planned, so you start having a lot more cost to build that same fiber route. But from my perspective, in deploying our network to more enterprise and more data center type buildings, we're really concerned about congestion and being able to design routes that are optimized from a cost perspective.
So, like from our experience, ECS is a great system. ECS is a common duct system underneath Manhattan and the Bronx. And certain parts are congested to get the cable through. But once you get the cable through, everything's great. But the next major hurdle that providers like us have is we have to build conduits off that ECS system into the different commercial buildings because there's no common duct system to go from the ECS system to the building. And I would say like 50% of the time or less, Verizon may or may not grant you the right to use their point of entry into the buildings. ECS is also owned by Verizon, but ECS is chartered to make a neutral duct system for everyone to use. So we find our cost and time is spent excavating, in building these conduits. And excavating in itself is pretty easy, but it gets more complex, especially in Manhattan, because you have so many existing utility crossings, and so it means everything has to be done by hand. And so that means it's costly, because it takes more time and you gotta find space to put these conduits in. I think, what the city may want to do long term is try to look at having a common duct system, not only what ECS already has, but going to the buildings. And I remember probably some time ago they had some sort of request for information, 10 years ago. Yeah, and I think to make broadband really available and deployable to all these buildings cost effectively, that common duct system is required. So each provider doesn't have to build these ducts. I go into a building sometimes and I see there's like 5 different ducts from each different company built, and this is hilarious. When there's plenty of room in the first 1 or 2 ducts. So anyway, yeah, that's my take.
So I certainly concur with everything Cliff and are saying about the cost. It's very expensive to do business in New York City. We've heard numbers from out of town companies that come in to build networks, and it's 4 or 5 times more expensive to build the same network that they build here that they'll build in other parts of the country. And a lot of that's driven by union costs. But I want to get on my soapbox here about one of the biggest issues and one of my biggest problems with building networks in New York City, and it's the regulatory environment, the franchise, specifically the franchise costs, the utility taxes, and all these added burdens that are put on us when we're trying to build these networks. We get conflicting messages. One message from the city is we'd like to propagate broadband access to the underserved and every part of the city. On the other hand, they put a franchise model in place that charges us per foot of network that we deploy. So previously we used to be in a revenue-based franchise model. So if you success-based, if you generated revenue, you paid franchise fees. If you build speculatively, this is a barrier to building speculatively, right? So now if we're going to put about 1 million feet of cable in this year. That 1 million feet has a price tag that escalates quarter by quarter, and I think by 2022, 23, it's going to be $3.50, $4 a foot that we have to pay the city for the privilege of having fiber optic cable into the streets of New York, on top of paying utility tax, real estate taxes for that privilege, right? So I feel like there's this huge regulatory and tax burden that if they really want broadband everywhere, they want to incent providers like ourselves to speculatively build and support this city, they would eliminate that challenge. Yes, what our challenges are, that is, I think that's the biggest challenge in front of our industry right now, is the city talking out of both sides of the mouth, saying they want everything for everyone for free. At the same time, they want us to pay a huge premium for the privilege of providing free service.
So do you think that there's some politics involved in this situation?
Clearly, when I speak with DeWitt, I feel as though the Deputy Commissioner of DeWitt, specifically Al Jenkins, really gets this and understands the problem. He came after the franchise was put in place, I think, in 2012. the new version of the franchise. So I think they get it, but there's political headwinds. You know, you look at this interesting project. There's a project with the Link NYC, the kiosks being deployed all over the city. Well, on one hand, you have politicians saying, well, this is great, we want them in our neighborhood. The next day, I think it was the Bronx, president, he said, the next day, he got in and he said, we don't, you know, one day he said, we don't have enough of these. The next day he said, these are causing too many problems in our neighborhoods. We have homeless people congregating around them. So, you know, there's no synergy, I think, across the city from a political perspective and the technology perspective.
So I'm going to just toss one quick question to you guys, and then I'm going to open it up for a couple of questions. So in terms of doing business in New York State and New Jersey, can you guys talk about, is it a lot easier, or is the playing field becoming more even? Because I heard talk a few years ago that it was much easier to do business and get wiring done in Jersey. If you guys can address that very briefly, which I know is a little complicated of a question. If you can speak to that just for a second.
So I'll just quickly answer and give these guys a chance. So first and foremost, it's harder to get approval in New Jersey because you have to go to each municipality to get approval on a municipality by municipality basis. There's hundreds of them. So when you move from town to town, you have to get approval from each town. That's paid. New York has everything homogenized. It's all run through Do It. They do it really well. It's just very expensive. The cost of doing business here is just dramatically higher than anywhere else. But I think they've really thought through the process of getting things done in New York City. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. Nothing to add.
Okay.
Yeah, that's basically the lay of the land. You know, in Jersey, you're going block and tackling municipality by municipality. In New York, you just have one place to go, and it's a lot easier, but much more expensive.
Okay, and I'll open it up for a few questions. We got time for a few. Do you guys have any questions? All right.
So I've heard similar discussions in private, say 15 years ago, on the difficulties of connectivity inside of New York City, and it almost sounds like the problems are basically, it is almost as bad today as it was 15 years ago, just with different names involved for companies and slightly higher bandwidth. Srihari had mentioned that having a shared duct system going into the buildings would be a good idea. I agree, it is. Like, if you look at Amsterdam, they're basically doing that. But in your opinion, has there actually been anything that's gotten better from a regulatory and shared infrastructure basis today versus 15 years ago?
So I'll take the first shot at that. I've been in business for a while. I think it's pretty much the same, if not worse. I think Ray's point about the regulatory implications and costs have probably made that end of it worse. I mean, our competitors, we're the new entrants to the market. Our competitors like the Zaos, previously above them to the world, and Level 3s, AT&Ts, those folks are still on the grandfathered rate for what we pay as franchisees. So there's a lot of inequality between us and them. If they started paying on a per foot basis like we pay, it would be probably change their balance sheets and their income statements across the board. But so maybe Srihari to add to that.
Obviously, we're paying a higher cost, not only because of the per foot cost, but also remember the prevailing wage is what we have to pay all our workers, and so that escalates all the time. So if you look at our costs now versus 15 years ago, it costs a lot more to put the fiber in. So we have a higher cost basis, plus you have the real property estate tax, which is like 10 or 11% per year, and that also escalates. So we do have a higher cost basis, but in terms of like real technical problems, they still remain the same. But it's probably more worse than it because 15 years ago we didn't have as many utilities on the ground as we do today, and so that means the next person that comes in is to try to run fiber through an existing common system, conduit common system. Like the common conduit system like ECS, that's more congested, as Cliff mentioned to you. Or if you try to excavate and try to put conduits in, same thing. You're trying to find space on the ground to put your pipe in. It's not that bad, but in some areas it's really bad. Going up and down, making these curves, and so hasn't changed. It's only progressively going to get worse as more providers come into the scene, so to speak.
Thanks. Phil, I think that's a good question, and I want to be clear though. I think the process, procedure in the city is very well laid out. And, having done a lot of building in New Jersey also, and having been a franchisee since 2002 personally, I feel as though that this city really gets it when they think about how to provide access to the public right of way, to everything from conduits under the street to traffic poles and light poles and utility poles around the city. The city gets it. It's a cost issue, and I feel it's a tax. While they don't call it franchise, they explicitly say franchise fee is not a tax. It's a tax on our business, and we give away. I mean, you're in positions where companies are going to end up giving away 50% of their revenue to support this right to be in a public right of way. It's just egregious. Before that, and by the way, that's 50% before you get to income taxes, right? So it's pretty meaningful.
Awesome. All right, well, that concludes the, we have one more question? Oh, yes, please, one more.
I have an affinity for dark fiber in the city, and how it adds value to real estate. And since you guys are all new entrants into the city, albeit under a new cost structure, I know your counts are pretty high in terms of what you're building in the metro. Far exceeds what used to be built back in the legacy development decade. So that's sort of point one. What's the delta between what used to be built in the metro architecture and what you're doing today? And how has that impacted the price for a dark fiber repair on a monthly recurring basis that's leased to the market? Like what, to the extent you can share, like what's the average price for a pop-to-pop here, on-net to on-net, let's call it from a dark fiber perspective, monthly? So anybody, hopefully.
So look, my feeling on this, when it's colo to colo, or colo to data center, it's productize and commoditize, right? That stuff's going to zero. That's a cross connect across the metro. That's going to hit rock bottom really soon. And I think that's the way you mitigate that risk is you have high density, right? You up, and yes, now cable size. Like my normal backbone cable size is 1728 that we're putting in, and we're feeding. We're dropping 576s and 864s off of that, right? When we taper, and we'll taper down. We do a lot of fiber to the curb, right? So it's street furniture. We'll taper down to maybe a 192, 216 as the smallest cable in our network. So that's we're putting in much fatter cables, and those are going to go to probably bigger cables down the road. But anyway, between care hotels, I see that price point going to $400 or $500. Unfortunately, Digital Realty and Telex and Equinix are going to make more money off our circuit connecting those buildings on their cross connects and port charges than we do on the Metro Fiber.
That's it. That's right. Well, we don't do pop to pop, but we do enterprise to enterprise buildings. So typically, again, dark fiber is not our main business, but we sell it between $2,000 and $3,000. Our backbone is typically comprised of 432 and 864, but fitting 864 or even higher, I don't know how you can fit that in because it's really, really tight. But you're probably already used to the
spiderweb. The spiderweb ribbon's smaller than the ribbon used to.
Oh, okay. The new Sumitomo cable, right?
It's AFL.
Oh, AFL. Oh, okay. Yeah, but anyway, we're used to those central tube stack ribbons, so those are huge and hard to maneuver and to fit into the ECS ducts, especially when you're sharing it with other people. But again, because it's kind of congested, our main backbone is primarily on 6th Avenue, and we're building a new one on the east and west side. What we find is the crossing going east to west is limited, so for us to get that price down lower, it's difficult, but I think you're in a better position to sell dark at a cheaper rate. But what we do, how we're delivering gigabit internet access for really cheap, like $250 or $850 a month, is what we do is once we have that dark fiber, we basically break that fiber up into multiple wavelengths, and we push multiple waves into these buildings, and each customer gets a wave. And so traditionally, providers usually push a solid pair or whatever into the building, and then they have a switch. And our architecture is still a bit different. We just do passive wavelengths, to these customers, and that's how we get our price down. But I suspect in dark fiber, if you have these large cables, with this new design, you can fit them. I'm sure there's a way to get that price down. So that's probably gonna be a function of fiber count to get that monthly price down.
Okay, and I'll let Cliff get the last word.
Okay. All right, so, if you're in telecom, I think you have a lot of experience with price compression, and, Ed had a nice chart up there before showing the cost of, I think, internet, and just like it was a hockey stick in the opposite direction, just falls right to the floor. So if you're not prepared to play that game, you shouldn't be here. And so the way we look at that is that we build high count cables, of course, but when you're in the fiber world, there is a theoretical limit to the bottom of where that goes, as long as no one else puts more fiber in. So every time another provider comes along and puts in more fiber, that changes the game a little bit. Right now, I think it's pretty stable because AbovNet did an enormous overbuild a few years ago, which Bill, of course, put a number of 864s between these carrier hotel buildings, which I think Zayo's been marketing to their advantage to take any of that market away from folks like myself. But at the end of the day, as long as there's nothing added, there is a theoretical limit to how low it goes. So I think we understand that, and we're ready to play to that tune.
All right, well, thank you, John. Give these guys a hand. Thank you so much.
Two continents, one city, one internet exchange. Welcome to DE-CIX Istanbul.
Herkese merhaba. Hi everybody. A warm welcome from Istanbul, Turkey. My name is Bülent Chen, and I'm the regional director for DE-CIX Turkey and surrounding countries. It has been a very exciting and challenging experience since DE-CIX started its activities back in 2015. Since then, we have been growing, and currently we are present in 5 data centers in Istanbul, 4 on the European side and 1 on the Asian side. We have been continuously working to connect new members to our internet exchange platform, as we are building to create an internet ecosystem and a digital hub in Turkey and for the region. In order to make this happen and to make it successful, of course, we would need you to connect as well. So therefore, don't wait, get connected, and let me take this opportunity to wish you all a very exciting DE-CIX Summit, and looking forward to see you in Istanbul. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Two continents, one city, one internet exchange. Welcome to...
Thank you for the panels. That was great. Appreciate that. Now we have Christian Cock coming up to talk about NINOG, co-founder. Thanks, Christian.
Hello, hello. All right. First off, thanks Ed and Ivo and the rest of the DE-CIX team for giving me a few minutes here to talk about NINOG. I see a bunch of familiar faces in the room, so I'm sure somebody who's been to 1 or 2 NINOGs so far. So what is NINOG? I'm sure everybody's familiar with NANOG, which is a North American network operator group. NINOG is the same thing, but just on a hyper-local basis for the New York surrounding metro, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and so forth. There's about 8 million people living in New York City alone, 20 million in the New York City MSA, 24 million in the CSA. It's a lot of people, and about 300,000 actually work in tech. Think about that on a network engineering kind of scale or infrastructure, and how many people you see at these local events. It's a lot of people not having the opportunity to come out. So a little story about when I first went to my first NINOG and how we all came about starting NINOG. It was the late 90s, early 2000s. I was working with network engineering, installing wireless in hotels back then. Got introduced to NINOG, learned about the mailing list. The company didn't want to pay for me to go though. Fast forward a few years, 2006, I was working for a company called Globix. Finally had the opportunity to go to a NINOG when it was local here in Brooklyn. After that, I started going to more finally, and I actually was fortunate to work for companies that would allow me the benefit to go. So when we were thinking about creating NINOG, we thought about all those people that work locally for local companies here in New York in the New York City Metro that don't have that opportunity to go, and we thought we'd bring something to them. So, what we are a local network operator group based in the New York City Metro, and we're bringing people together for collaboration and knowledge sharing and to foster innovation. Enabling new generations of network engineers, students, some of the top schools here. You got Columbia University, Fordham University, NYU. And we're focused on smaller meetups throughout the year, unlike NANOG doing 3 big meetings. So every couple of months, we're going to be having a meetup. And they'll be very focused on what we're talking about, whether it's New York City infrastructure, whether it's telecom policy, whether it's network engineering or specific protocols like MPLS or BGP. And we're currently formalizing as a nonprofit. We're going to incorporate and become an official organization. So who's involved? Myself, Dave Temkin, Andrew Baird, and Jessica Smith from Digital Realty. They've been with us from the beginning. Everybody's done a fantastic job, really committed to making this happen. So how can you help? Volunteer to help at meetups and events. Become a sponsor. We're currently working on a model to allow companies and organizations to become part of NINOG with annual sponsorships and per meeting sponsorships. Speak at an event. If you have something interesting to talk about, I've already identified a few people in this room who've talked today that I would love to have them speak at a future NINOG event. Join our meetup group on meetup.com and our other social channels. And just help spread the word. You know, we're fairly new. Our first meetup was in May. Our second meetup was just in September at the Digital Realty Marketplace Live event. We're currently working on some other interesting things for the rest of the year. So make sure you spread the word and make sure you stay in touch through the social channels so you know how to stay informed about future events. Here's where you can find us, meetup.com. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, you can go to the website, or you can email us at hello@ninog.org. If you're interested in volunteering or your company is interested in sponsorship, you can talk to me directly today, or you can shoot us an email at that email address. Thank you.
Now we are at the end of our incredible journey across the globe, returning back to the country we started in, Germany. Flying back to Germany and saying hello to DE-CIX Düsseldorf.
Hello from Hamburg, Düsseldorf and Munich. My name is Markus Braugmann. I've been at DE-CIX as Business Development Manager since 2013 and I'm responsible for our regional IX family in Germany. This includes our location in Hamburg, Düsseldorf and Munich. At these DE-CIX locations, we enable our customers to establish local peerings to create redundancy and to save management costs. The increasing amount of internet traffic shows us how these locations are become more and more important. It allows local content to stay in the region and internet content is closer to the end user. Come up to me for a chat if you want to find out more. Bye from my side and enjoy the sound.
Christian, thanks for that presentation. I had a quick little story. Every year I go to China because it's the day after ITW and it's easy to go to. And this year I was thinking to myself, why doesn't New York have one of these? And little did I know, it was all planned and already getting going. So it was great to see. I mean, it's such an opportunity and you can take it anywhere. I think DE-CIX has been heavily supported. So thank you. Next, we have our next panel. Panelists can please come up and get mic'd up. Our panel is impacts of the cloud on network connectivity. So please come up and join us.
We're going to be sharing the mic. I'll stand here.
Sharing is caring.
Yeah, sharing is caring, that's right.
That's what I teach my 3-year-old.
So, hi, I'm Alyssa Miller, CEO of iMiller Public Relations. We're going to be talking about impacts of the cloud on connectivity today. We're going to have just a nice discussion. We stand between you and lunch pretty much, so we're going to have an interesting chat. This is not pre-planned at all. I have no idea what I'm going to ask, so this could get very interesting. But before I even start, I know Monica, we met you earlier, and thank you so much. Fantastic job, great conversation, thank you. So we met you earlier, but we haven't met Phil or Tony yet, but I'm sure everybody knows them. But if you want to take a moment just to say hello, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Phil. I'm the CEO of NYI. We run data centers in the New York and New Jersey markets with some facilities on the West Coast as well. And basically we're a solutions company that also runs data centers.
I can just speak. My name is Tony Rasabi. I think I know many of you in the audience, and I look after the co-location and connectivity line of business for Digital Realty.
And of course, we're familiar with Eva from all over the world. So thank you, and thank you for being here today and having us here. Thank you. Cloud network-to-network connectivity. So earlier we heard from the folks over at Console. And that's one of the aspects of what I think we should be talking about is how has the interconnection and the network-to-network connectivity evolved since the onset of cloud. So we'll start with Tony, because I think from a history of interconnection, that would be a great area for you.
Yeah, sure. So a big part of our focus has been, not only the internet exchanges, but obviously the incentives of cloud compute. We spend a lot of time and focus with some of the large global providers, but also we made the announcement, I think, a couple of weeks ago, where we're going to be using a similar service and console from Megaport, but clearly it's a great focus for us. And with it, it's the fastest growing ecosystem that we have today within our facility. So it's growing on a over 65% year over year. So I think for those folks who are interested, obviously we were more than happy to show you who is in our facility today, and obviously we want to grow not just with the global providers, but with the local providers and the niche providers of cloud services.
Yeah, so Phil, from your side, what does the demand look like from inside the data center onto the network?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously, I don't nearly have the carry in my voice that you do.
Okay.
From our standpoint, over the last 5 years or so, you have a consistent shifting in workloads from the data center back into the cloud, and then when you have consistently used resources, you sometimes come back into the data center because it's just more cost effective to do it that way. And now, as much as I drive myself crazy with the words cloud and hybrid, and I think they probably make everyone in this room sick. The new word is multi-cloud. So the idea is, every one of these cloud providers, whether it's Azure or AWS or Google or what have you, has a kind of core competency that's relevant. So again, similar to what Telus has done, we utilize Megaport for that as well. But the idea is, making sure that companies have the ability to migrate workloads between their varying infrastructures so that they can really get the best of all worlds.
Yeah, I'm gonna move over to Eva if you wouldn't mind passing the mic. Because how are exchanges like DE-CIX, modifying or enabling connectivity to the cloud other than public internet or peering to other internet providers?
Yeah, this is a very good question, and the answer to this is that the internet exchanges will play in the cloud scenario probably the same role as they started to play years ago if it comes to aggregation for interconnection needs on a layer 2 traffic interconnection. What I'm trying to say is around internet exchanges there are a lot of existing ecosystems. These ecosystems consist today of the majority consists today of network operators, ISPs. These network operators, they have to serve businesses, corporates, enterprises, providing cloud connectivity to. The Internet Exchange can play a role as aggregation point, working together with partners. These are solution providers like companies we named already today. These can be Council, can be Epson, can be Megaport. They do provide similar services with unique strengths, of course, on different platforms. Or network operators can use the Internet Exchanges to serve their customers with direct links to the big cloud application providers like Amazon, Azure, or Google. So in a nutshell, Internet Exchanges will play an aggregation role as they did for network operators. Now they can do the same for all of these businesses who want to get one-stop shop solution for cloud connectivity.
So, interesting perspective from the inside out. Now I'm going to go to Monica. Monica, we got to be honest here, right? What are you hearing in the marketplace? You're looking at our industry from outside in. And, you know, obviously these are companies that come to you, right? They pitch you stories. So what are you hearing with the stories? What are you reading? What are you writing about when it comes to cloud connectivity? And how does all of this potentially fit into the stories that you're working on?
Well, I have a lot of readers who are small businesses concerned with these type of things. But I'd say the number one thing with cloud is, first of all, how can I get the best service for longevity, right? So, and also cybersecurity is like a huge issue. Okay, now I've synced up with this provider, but how secure is the service? How long can I stay with them? And those are things that the readers really want to know. And if you add cybersecurity to any topic now, that's really the top concern of a lot of growing businesses, because, I mean, you can't even, as a consumer, you can't even go shopping without that being a concern. So yeah, I would say that's the number one thing that I'm hearing and seeing. And there's a lot of new players in cloud services, so they're definitely coming to us and wanting us to talk about their product or give their perspective on how these things can be made better.
Yeah. So, now, Tony, I know you don't want to use the mic, but I'm going to ask you to use the mic because we can hear you a little bit better. Security, great question. And, you know, a lot of providers like digital are a little hamstrung with security because you don't go into that network. So what are some of the ways that you can provide assurance from a security standpoint for those who are looking to be in your space?
Yeah, so I would say there's obviously two types of security. There's the physical infrastructure security that we have, obviously, we outsource to a third party, and they actually look after the security of the building, etc. So we have that, and that's 24 hours. We also have all the facilities with cameras, etc. But what you're talking about is actual cybersecurity on the physical application layer. So as you mentioned, we are concerned about that, but the challenge for us is we don't go up the stack. So we don't provide the cloud services, we use partners. Similar approach we do with security. We do use a lot of consultants to ensure that we have the most appropriate and effective processes and procedures, but also, we are not going to implement a security per se offering. It's just not and we don't want to interfere with many of the other folks here who are in that business. Our business is really more on the infrastructure side in terms of physical infrastructure, as well as the interconnection side. There was a point I just wanted to tack on the cloud piece, though. I think it's really important because the earlier panel talked about how wireless is growing, and whether it be basically fiber to the tower or whatever it might be. I think it's super important to understand that as we've basically just started to scratch the surface on cloud, I think it's growing at such an exceptional rate that it's super important to understand that folks like Cliff and Ray and Chari are actually going to see a huge, as I mentioned, growth in terms of if they plug into the most appropriate patches of where the business is going. And I think the cloud services are going to continue to grow. Similarly, the wireless, but it all transcends into one sort of ecosystem, as I like to say, or we can call them communities of interest. So wireless, cloud, and content, they're all going to patch off over the fiber that these gentlemen provide that is a great service. And obviously, I think they're going to see massive growth because at the end of the day, we're not at the stage where we can provide long strands of wireless connectivity. Eventually it could be, but I think it is a key. So connectivity, the exchanges, the cloud services, they're all going to play a role. But getting back to the point, which is really around around security, how do we protect those networks so there isn't outside interference? And I think, unfortunately, it's not going to be up to me. I think it's going to be up to the folks, that are here, but also, and I'm sure they're partnering and looking at, this quite effectively because it is a concern. We had last year at Marketplace Live, we had a whole panel for those folks who attended, specifically just on cybersecurity, which was super, super important. And it's going to become more and more relevant as more and more things are pushed to the cloud. So I think, sorry for the long-winded answer, but I think I want to cover that.
That's all right. I know Eva wants to talk about something because there's some interesting things I think that you guys are working on, but I do want to pose an interesting question, and maybe we can go back to it when you're done, which is there space or is there a potential play for data centers or co-location operators to come up with a hyper-secure colo model that provides assurances to customers who are coming into your facility that you have vetted the type of connectivity or solutions that your customers are offering, so that even though you can't control what and how they're doing it, you can put measures in place to vet them so that you can offer a hyper secure environment from cyber as well as physical security standpoint. Just a thought. We'll circle back to that.
And
But,
while you're thinking, I just wanna elaborate on the question what DE-CIX can provide to the security, because we're not the data center operator. These are the guys here. We're not the network operator. We do provide a platform for interconnection, and the interconnection to the cloud is a different one that we know from the classic bilateral or one-to-many interconnection around serverless peering. It's a different one. It requires a security, very secure and robust resilient solution, because this is all businesses are looking into and asking for. So from our point of view, we have introduced today in Munich, it will be available in Frankfurt from today, DE-CIX Cloud Direct service, which is nothing else than using the DE-CIX platform for a very secure, dedicated, private link to a variety of different cloud operators or cloud aggregation providers like Console, Epsilon. There are different examples from the market. So a network connected to DE-CIX can use their existing port as a physical interface on the platform and build up on this port a dedicated, very secure private link, either to one of the selected cloud operators like AWS, Azure, Google, and smaller direct, or using cloud aggregation providers as we already discussed about. So this is our solution today live in Germany and coming soon to other DE-CIX presences.
Cool, thank you. So I'm gonna hand it over to Phil for my tough question, right? With the cloud comes an opportunity for new business models. We're seeing that with Console, with Megaport. Can that also be a new business model as it relates to co-location and data center? And if so, what could that look like from your perspective?
I'll give you the short answer, which is, of course. Otherwise, what am I doing here?
That's right.
Look. There are the companies that are sophisticated enough to be able to manage their own security platform, in which case a solution like Telix is perfect, and it wouldn't be feasible on that scale with the DLP and Telix model to be able to manage that element of the environment, which is why it makes sense to have an ecosystem that would maintain that. In our world, which is further up the stack in the data center market, people want a turnkey solution. I mean, what we try to offer companies is, kind of the best of both worlds, and what the opportunity of what the cloud really provides is this ability to kind of obfuscate the logistical hurdles associated with operating infrastructure. I think you can make a very clear argument that it's more cost effective at certain workloads to have bare metal or iron or whatever cool word you want to use to describe a server run your environment, but it's that logistical. People don't want to employ server huggers, and the cool kids are in the cloud, and you have to kind of utilize that tool set. But to the extent that a data center can come in and provide a kind of soup to nuts approach where you have managed networking layer, managed firewall layer to that network that gives them the ability to control their own environments, create their own rule sets, things like that, but they still have the data center to fall back on when there are issues, and there will inevitably be issues. And the data center can kind of operate the environment as kind of colo plus, high touch data center services, and then you utilize the layer 2 connectivity platforms like Megaport or Console or whomever to migrate workloads securely, because it's layer 2, between cloud operators and whatever resources need to live within the data center, while having that element of your environment managed by the people that are on site. And I think that's where the kind of retail service providers like us, which are getting fewer and further between, really fit into the picture.
Great, thank you. I don't know if anybody else had anything to add there, but I'd like to open it up to questions for anybody here. I do have some more questions if you don't, so I guess another question then, if you also are so shy. With co-location, then you have your networks, your layer 1, layer 2 networks, then you've got your exchanges, then you've got your cloud exchanges. You've got layers upon layers upon layers. Where does the responsibility lie for security as you add each layer? And is it getting harder or easier to maintain a level of security? So I don't know, it's a tough question. So Tony, you want to talk into the mic? Thanks.
We'll talk in the mic.
Thank you.
I think today the end customer expects security add-on basically as a free service, essentially, which is essentially, so I think you mentioned a turnkey solution, which is really what the customer wants. I come from the network background where at the time DDoS mitigation was being introduced probably 8 to 10 years ago as a real big service. It's been around. And within 2 years, the expectation was that's just going to be coupled into your IP transit offering as a service on top of it and included. So I think the challenge, but more and more attacks have come and it's become much more relevant, so I think there is a way that you can distinguish that service as assuming it's somewhat more effective. But the question was really around who owns the security level within the facility, whether it's the network provider coming in, whether it's the actual infrastructure provider of the data center, or whether it's the person who's running the application. If I were to give you from a purely selfish standpoint, the data center perspective, we would say that it's going to be dependent on the application layer. That's what our view would be. But I think I think the onus is on actually everybody to control the security piece. So I think it's the infrastructure player who's coming in who needs to ensure that both on a physical level as well as on an application layer in terms of talking to, and that's why people look at providing solutions and look at providing end-to-end service from basically a turnkey. But then at the end of the day, the infrastructure provider with respect to the data center, physical, also working with the network provider, and then the application layer folks who are, whether it's a cloud service provider, an MNO, whether it's a content provider, they also need to have input. So it's going to be the aggregate impact of all three getting in a room and talking about how they're going to protect against some type of attack. They're inevitable. They're going to happen. I mean, and it's going to happen even more regularly. We see it.
It has to.
And it's unfortunate, but you got to protect yourself against what's going on.
Yeah, and it has to happen. It has to happen.
Yeah, sure.
And these are the discussions we want to have. We want to use platforms like different community organizations. We have Nanok today in the room. We have Christian there. So this can be one part of the discussion where network operators, together with data centers and other infrastructure operators like internet exchanges or cloud aggregation providers like Console, Absolute Megaport, etc., can sit together and have a detailed look on this chain. There's a value chain in providing this cloud connectivity service. All these parties are involved in. So there has to have a discussion about standards, where responsibility ends and where the responsibility of the other party starts, and close the gaps as possible.
Open my eyes, there's an opportunity too. So one of the things I want to leave everybody in this room with, some thoughts of. I think the cloud presents us all with opportunities to look at our businesses from a very different perspective, and I think that security at each layer of the platform or the capabilities that we're providing access to is really important, and having ownership of your own security of what you are responsible for, and being able to communicate that effectively with those that are working with you is only going to help your customers. So there's a business opportunity here, I think, for those to come in and understand how to put all those pieces together, how to have those conversations, how to enable people to work better together, and offer, a hyper secure solution to the marketplace. Because I think that's something that's going to be required. If not already today, it's going to be asked for tomorrow. Yeah.
I think what's super important today is we talk a lot about it. I'm not sure there's an actual active participation from all the parties. And it's much more, today we're quite reactive. When an attack comes, like, oh my gosh, it's coming, we've got to handle this. You actually need to go out and really arm yourselves to ensure that these attacks are prepared. We actually have just started to implement that process where we're beginning to ensure that we're prepared for any type of attack. I mean, I shouldn't say just, we've actually adjusted our plan from a go-forward standpoint. So it's super important that we take much more of a reactive approach, proactive approach, as opposed to a reactive approach. And I think taking a reactive approach puts you behind the 8 ball, and unfortunately you're going to be succumb to the pressure of all these attacks.
I think there's an interesting point there. One of the things that we implemented early on is this idea of understanding traffic patterns and trying to identify the precursors to something that would be considered an attack. So that if you have a substantial amount of traffic that's unidirectional, then that it might be scanning for certain open ports or whatever. But there's nuance, and that's the problem. The problem is, as great as it would be to just walk into a room and say, we have the most secure, bulletproof, hyper secure environment, here you go. It's not necessarily believable. I mean, the situation is that, and maybe it's because I've been sitting in front of these things for 20 years, and I'm too honest about whether there's going to be a problem or not. But the idea of even providing a soup to nuts approach as you go up the stack to provide them with firewalling services or IDS services or IPS services or DDoS mitigation. At some point, there is a technology that is there on the internet. At some point, the customer is in control of creating secure passwords or not creating secure passwords, or having the compliance requirements internally that might prevent the next type of SQL based attack or the next type of compromise, or somebody within their environment might click an email or try to log into a fake Bank of America account or whatever happens. So there's only so much we can control, but being able to articulate that and offer people a solution that allows them to focus on the areas of their environment where they should be focusing, rather than wasting time maybe on the network layer where that's a fairly easy thing to outsource, and focus their efforts on the application side, and maybe articulating and pointing out the areas of the application that they should be looking at as a data center provider is I think it's important and it's unique, and in this hyper commoditized world, it's a differentiator.
Well, I think that application monitoring and open source is a panel discussion in and of itself. There's a lot to, next time there's a lot there. Thank you guys. Thank you for the conversation. Anybody have any last questions? Well, we're going to be breaking for some food very shortly. So thank you.
Let's play football now. Where to do it? Oh, probably one of the best cities like we have in Spain. Welcome to Madrid.
Responsible for the vibrant internet exchange in the community. Thank you so much.
Okay, kids, I want to thank you. That concludes our program. I want to thank everybody for attending. Special thanks to our panelists and our sponsors. And very special thanks to Rob Myers and C.B. Richard Ellis for allowing to have this. Thank you very much. It was great. We appreciate it. And my parting words, my parting word is Dallas. Think Dallas. Anybody's going to be at Nanog or in town at Dallas next Wednesday night, please join us for our launch. And anybody who's sitting on any service orders, please sign. So anyway, thanks very much. Take care. Join us for lunch.
Let us fly now across the ocean, again to the youngest members of the fraternity. With your host there, at D'Agostino. That's visiting Dallas.
Welcome to I'm Ed Aquino, New York and Dallas. In Dallas, this launch we introduce our services to all data center security and we expand beyond partners now to Zayo,